All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, English Immigration to the American Colonies. My name is Kathleen McKenzie, Education and Programming Manager here at American Ancestors, and I will be moderating today's session. This program is brought to you by the Brew Family Learning Center. American Ancestors is a nonprofit organization supported by our members and donors. We provide resources and expertise in nearly all aspects of family history and are pleased to offer such programming for our members and friends around the world. Our presenter today is senior genealogist Rhonda R. McClure. Rhonda is a nationally recognized professional genealogist and lecturer. Before joining American Ancestors in 2006, she ran her own genealogical business for 18 years. She was a contributing editor for Heritage Quest magazine, Biography magazine, and was a contributor to the History Channel magazine and American History magazine. In addition to numerous articles, she's the author of 12 books, including the award-winning Complete Idiot's Guide to Online Genealogy, Finding Your Famous and Infamous Ancestors, and Digitizing Your Family History. She is also the editor of the 6th edition of the Genealogist's Handbook for New England Research. Her areas of expertise are many and include immigration and naturalization, late 19th and early 20th century urban research, State Department federal records, New England, the Midwest, Southern, German, French, Italian, Scottish, Irish, French Canadian, and Atlantic Canadian research. So, whether your ancestors arrived at Jamestown on the Mayflower or came over in the years following, the majority of us with colonial ancestry hope to trace our family trees back to England. While there is a wealth of information available for tracing your ancestors' immigration from England to the colonies, it can require a diligence and willingness to search for many types of resources. In this online lecture today, Rhonda will highlight key records and resources available to help you in your search. At any point during today's presentation, please feel free to type your questions into the Q&A panel found at the bottom of your screen. We'll address as many of those as we can at the end. There is also an optional syllabus available for purchase to accompany this webinar if you're interested. I'll put that in the chat, and it will also be in the follow-up email later as well. Your purchase helps to support us in making these and other free webinars. This presentation is also being recorded for later viewing on our website and our YouTube channel. So if you missed something on today's first listen, don't worry, you can always go back and review the presentation later. All right, we've got a lot to get through today, so without further ado, please join me in welcoming Rhonda.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this webinar. This is a lot of information and a lot of areas. And so for the purposes of today, we're kind of breaking up the areas, obviously the New England colonies and the Mid-Atlantic colonies. I have chosen for the Southern colonies to separate out Virginia and then devote the rest of the Southern colonies as a section. So as we get into each area, the records will pertain to those places. We are going to start with New England. And for the purposes of New England, in this time frame, understand that we are talking predominantly about Connecticut, Rhode Island, Massachusetts, New Hampshire, and you can see the darker. The areas that have the colored slashes came much later than what we are talking about because we are predominantly focusing on the colonial period, which is up to the beginning of the American Revolution. By all means, we definitely want to start with finding aids. Finding aids are very, very important because they are going to lead you to sources. One of my personal favorite finding aids is the New England marriages prior to 1700, also very often referred to as Tories New England marriages. And it enumerates approximately 99% of all pre-1700 marriages of New Englanders that were found in published resources. That's an important thing. But the good news is that it has identified about 70% of maiden names, and even better, it is a searchable database on American ancestors. So here we have a sample entry for Tories New England marriages on the website, and it kind of looks just like this. What's nice about the website is that not only does it give you the marriage information that was also in the book that was published many, many years ago, but also it gives you additional info. So we have the name of the couple. In this case, we have Samuel Abbey and Mary Knowlton. Any previous marriages that either had places of residence, and then if there was an exact date of birth that was exact date of marriage that was known, it would include that. If it is based on the birth of a child, it will say like by or circa. So there are variations. However, after that entry, you see a lot of various short things in parentheses. These are the very, very important abbreviations signifying where Tori found the information originally. The source list gives you plenty of clues about where to look for more information about your ancestors. The abbreviations are decoded in a separate source list that's actually at the bottom of our search window for this particular database and can lead you to some valuable published resources. And so here we see we've circled Adams, 1898. When you have the PDF open of the various sources, you can then see that that refers to Andrew and Adams's genealogical history of Henry Adams of Braintree, etc. So once you have the understanding and the what it is, you can then go look for those original volumes yourself. So why do we use published genealogies? Well, for obvious reasons, they are super helpful for the 17th and 18th century research. Many of the detailed genealogies of your ancestors or affiliates may be found in these books. They help us to link together and differentiate families. And we've all had everybody's got the same name situation. Usually they provide us with biographical details, but I got to tell you, my big reason for looking at any kind of published anything is the citations in the books that lead us to other resources and record sets. Another very important finding aid for New England is Martin Hollick's New Englanders in the 1600s. This is an update of Torrey's work, and it was originally published in 1980, and then there was an update done in 2010. The format of the entries is similar to that of Torrey, giving you the details of the person and then the abbreviations. There is, like I said, a list of the various abbreviations in the book as well, allowing you to know where to go. He predominantly focused on kind of the published research. A lot of his resources are going to either be compiled books or various publications such as the New England Historical and Genealogical Register or the American Genealogist, a lot of the vetted types of journals. Of course, you can't talk about New England without talking about the Great Migration Study Project. Begun in 1988, it was directed by Robert Charles Anderson. He did so much work, genealogical and biographical research and writing of sketches for immigrants to New England. From 1620 to 1640 is the Great Migration years. He was able to publish 13 volumes that got us up to and finished 1635. There is a new project going that is beginning in 1636. And so this study project will continue, although we sadly had to say goodbye to Mr. Anderson. And each of the Great Migration books has sketches for the individuals that he has identified as coming over in a particular year. So in the Great Migration Begins, as we see here, the pages on this slide and on the next one we'll look at, for Thomas Hooker, he had arrived and was in the New England colonies by 1633, which the original Great Migration Begins was 1620 to 1633, and then the subsequent volumes were for 1634 and 35 that Robert Charles Anderson completed. And so what it gives us is as much information as could be found and identified for an individual. So what were their origins? When did they arrive? And if a ship is known, what ship did they come on? Their first residence here in colonial New England, then if they moved to somewhere else, occupation, lots of discussion. And then on the second set of these, you will see that he also includes information on the marriage for the individual as well as the children that came of that marriage. In some situations, he has in the comments, as you'll see in the right-hand page of this two-page set, the comments sometimes will talk about if there's controversy over who is the proper individual. There are a lot of individuals who have been misidentified. And so if he knows of that, he will identify it and explain why it can't be this person or that person. And although the actual sketches themselves only go up to 1635 presently, he was able to compile the Great Migration Directory, Immigrants to New England, 1620 to 1640. This leads you to published resources and other records. So, for instance, if they are in the Great Migration books themselves, he mentions that and cites that. If they are in another family history, he cites that as well. So this is a great interim volume for that 1636 to 1640 period. And here you can see a sample of that for Edward Norris here, again, telling us, his English origins, his year of arrival, where he was, and then the resources that were used to compile that, including some original records as well. However, not everybody came over in this time period of 1620 to 1640, so we also have some early New England study projects as well. The early New England families, which is under the direction of Alicia Crane Williams, is genealogical and biographical sketches for those who married in New England from 1641 to 1700. Basically, they are using Tory as their basis of individuals, and then they are creating some very valuable sketches for us. There are 2 volumes that have been presently published, and we are grouping these by year of marriage. So you will definitely want to check that out as well. And of course, there is the Mayflower families, also often referred to as the Silver Series. These were published by the General Society of Mayflower Descendants, and they go from the immigrant through the 5th generation and with listing the children of the 6th. Obviously, this was a huge undertaking. Everybody who was identified as a ship's passenger has a book. The original long-range goal was to go from all the way to the 7th generation with the naming of the children in the 8th. However, what we have are up through 5 generations for most of the individuals, with the exception of Billington and Rogers, who did get their 6th generation. Now, at American Ancestors, we have been given permission to take the pages from these volumes of the 5th generation with their spouses and their children, allowing you to sort of pick up the trail. Some additional Mayflower books that might help augment the Mayflower Passenger Silver Series would include these volumes here that you see. We have the Mayflower Descendant, which is, of course, the publication. We have been publishing that recently under Chris Child. There's also the Mayflower Deeds and Probates and the Mayflower Marriages. Both of these were done by Susan E. Roser, and the ultimately were reprinted. When it comes to colonial New England records, the good news is you have a lot of records. The bad news is you have a lot of records. So we have vital and church records for things like birth, baptism, marriage, death, burial, and gravestones. We have land records, grants and deeds, probate records that include wills, inventories, guardianships, town and colony records for meetings, actions, records, sources, censuses, taxes, you name it. You may be finding those in the town records. The court records, we are a litigious group of individuals, so there are lots of lawsuits, as well as, of course, the probate records. And then there are military records for both the colony and the town militia. Of course, before searching for certain things, it's really important that you know the jurisdictions within the states of New England. And most most of us assume everything's on the town level. That is true of our vital records. When it comes to land and probate, things differ. So some of them may have them on the town level. Rhode Island has everything on the town level. Their town clerks are used and abused. For New Hampshire and Massachusetts and Maine, the land and probate records are on the county level. For Connecticut, the land is on the town level and probate is within probate districts. And then for Vermont, the land is on the town level sometimes, and also for probate, they had districts. They have since combined those districts and are now on a county level. But for us, we have to pay attention to those those districts. And you may be asking yourself, how do I do that? How do I keep up on all of this? Well, that is why we have the Genealogist Handbook for New England Research. I was super proud to have been asked to be the editor of the 6th edition. Everything tells you, like when towns were started, what probate district they were attached to originally, and so on. And so depending on the state that you are researching in, you will find a narrative section devoted to the different types of records, as well as any that are unique to that particular state. And then you will find county maps, and then you will find town lists showing you all, like where a town came from, if it was created out of another town, and so forth. Here you can see the Connecticut town page. We have at the very second from the top, we have Wethersfield, which was actually incorporated in 1637. It's in the county of Hartfield. And underneath the name is the current probate district, should you be looking for people in the 20th century. However, you'll find that we included a pre-2011 probate district, in large part because it was 2011 that they kind of condensed a bunch of their probate districts. So understanding when certain probate districts were created, you can then look for them and do like the homework. So in this case, 1975, it was Newington. You would then look in the town of Newington and find out when that probate district was created. You could work your way backwards. All right, we want to move on to our mid-Atlantic colonies. When it comes to the mid-Atlantic colonies, we are focusing predominantly on New York and Pennsylvania, Maryland, and New Jersey and Delaware, with a caveat of understanding that for much of the period that we're talking about, Delaware was considered kind of like a southern part of Pennsylvania. Now, New York and New Jersey, of course, originally they were part of New Netherlands. So the early stuff pre 1664 is predominantly not English. It's when we get the Duke of York capturing New York and New Jersey in 1664 that we begin to see the kind of a change in some of the people who are settling in these areas. New York itself becomes a royal colony in 1685. And keep in mind that New Jersey itself was actually kind of like two separate sections. West Jersey, which was predominantly where the Quakers went, beginning in the 1670s, and then East Jersey, which saw a much bigger mixture of groups, including English, but also others from the United Kingdom. And so it's got a bigger mix. When it comes to Pennsylvania and Delaware, as I mentioned, Pennsylvania and Delaware, they were set apart from New York in 1681. And then the lands were granted to William Penn. Of course, everybody knows about him. At this point, Delaware was a part of Pennsylvania. It was known as the lower counties on the Delaware. So if you see that term in a book or in some kind of history, that's what they're talking about, is what became the state of Delaware. So many of the early records for Delaware may be found under Pennsylvania. Like some of what we had with New England, we are going to talk about some compilations, though these are going to be a little bit different. In this case, the compilations that I'm referring to here have to do with compilations of published archives. So the Pennsylvania Published Archive series covers 1664 to 1902. Here you can see it is available on Ancestry. That's the good news. But you will notice that unlike most of the things that are on Ancestry, there is no way to search for people in this. You'll see that there's no search form. Instead, what you must do is you must browse this collection. So the first thing that you would want to do is you are going to select the volume or the series that you're most interested in. And for this purposes of today, I chose series 2, which had the military and the church records. Once I have selected series 2, then I am given the appropriate volumes for that series. There were 9 series in total for the Published Archives of Pennsylvania, and they have varying degrees of volumes per series. So within this, again, now I have the volumes themselves, and I can look specifically for what I am most interested in. And you'll see that the third item, volume 2, part 1, names of persons for whom marriage licenses were issued previous to 1790. That takes me to scans of the original books. I am a geek. I love the fact that more and more of our images are coming on as from the original volumes themselves rather than just all microfilm. Keep in mind that as it pertains to this little collection here, the date that you see to the left of the couples are the date of the license. Now, this does not guarantee that this couple got married. However, it gives you an approximation of when they likely did, and if they had kids, they probably did get married. And so I've highlighted a couple of the early ones, one in 1746 that just lists June for Hannah Bailey and Walter Brown. And then we have 1748 September, a James Bailey and a Rebecca Davis. New Jersey has a similar collection of volumes. Theirs are documents relating to the colonial history of the state of New Jersey, 1631 to 1776. You can go to the Library of Congress website, and I've just highlighted the first volume up here, but there are many, many volumes that I just couldn't put all on the screen. keep in mind that you want to look at each one because in some situations, such as volume 1, the one that I have highlighted at the top, you should notice that down towards the bottom left of that, it does say volume 1, copy 1. And the next item that's sort of cut off in half on the left, that happens to be the copy 2. So there are some that have duplicate versions of the volume. You can download the whole volume if you so choose. So there is a index to the archives of the first series. And again, this is digital. You can find it on Internet Archive. So what I have done is I've sort of compiled how you would go about what we're doing here. So the first thing is to use that index to the archives of the state of New Jersey. And in this case, I did a search for Edward Billings, and you'll see that he has a lot of mentions. He was quite the mover and shaker. He served in various offices, but I have highlighted the notice that was found in volume 2, page 4. So the volumes are done with the Roman numerals, and then the pages are done with the uh, actual numbers themselves. So notice of mentions his name, volume 2, page 4. That took me to page 3 or item 3 on this, which is the New Jersey letterhead from Daniel Cox to the Council of Proprietors of West Jersey. And notice that I have highlighted where this was pulled from. Some of these things are being pulled from published volumes. In this case, Smith's History of New Jersey, and it gives us the page numbers. Then we get the letter itself, and in parentheses, you notice after Mr. Billings' deceased, we have that one that is a footnote, which takes us to item 4 on this screen. And that gives us additional information saying, you know, nobody knows exactly when he died. There are those who say one thing, there are those who say something else. And then the person who is saying, yeah, he couldn't have died when they said, because is then citing additional items, including, guess what, the New Jersey archives, which he is leading us back to item 5, showing that entry in the index as well. But then it also mentions Mulford's, New Jersey, which is another compiled history on New Jersey, which you would want to check out if this was your ancestor. We also have for New York a similar compilation. Now, what I'm showing you here is the table of contents of O'Callahan's 2-volume calendar of the historical manuscripts in the office of the Secretary of State. And again, those are located on the Library of Congress. What you'll see that I've highlighted specifically is the section of volume 2 that pertains to the records of England. And so I can go into that volume and look for additional documents. There's also for Maryland a great compilation. It's a 2-volume set by Robert W. Barnes, The British Roots of Maryland Families. He's got it alphabetically arranged. You'll notice that the name of the family is bold. Under that is your references, and then under that are your individuals that he has pulled out with information about them, and in many cases, their origins, so where they were coming from before they got to the colonies. Let's talk a little about their records. When it comes to Maryland, gotta love their digital resources. They have a section on their digital resources. You can just see it underneath the links there. The Archives of Maryland Online. This has to do with their historical documents and allows you as the researcher to research topics on Maryland's Constitution and proceedings, laws, General Assembly, as well as governor's papers, military records, and so on. This is where you want to start your research if you are looking for colonial Maryland individuals. Within that area, I actually chose their probate records, and I have highlighted one that was the the 415, the Hartsbrook and Scortis Land Office and Prerogative Court Records of Colonial Maryland. Once I click on that, it takes me to the page you see here, and that allows you then to look at it both as an abstract as well as being able to view the original images, which are published, a published book. And here we see that I chose the court records, and specifically, I am looking for the testamentary proceedings. That is going to lead me to the original volume that I am most interested in. And in this case, this is some early stuff that has to do with probating. From that, I was able to go to Family Search to the testamentary proceedings from 1657 to 1777, and that is available. I then looked and found specifically the testamentary for proceedings, volume 2, and then I was able to find, in this case, the item that I show you here. I wish I could tell you that this was an extreme situation. No, you are going to be dealing with some of the very old English writing as you are working in this. So you may want to get some paleography resources to help you reading this. However, at the very top, we do have, well, third line down, it does say that on the 11th day of April, and goes on to talk about the estate of, and the name of the individual is at the very bottom just before the signature, so of James Basio. When it comes to Pennsylvania and their land records, one of the things that you definitely want to do, and this is per the Pennsylvania website, is to look at Pennsylvania Land Records, A History and Guide by Deborah Bingham Munger. This is an excellent book. You can get an electronic copy of it through like Kindle, but it's going to give you an explanation of the different types of records that they have, the understanding of proprietorships versus more traditional land as we are more familiar with it as we progressed as a country. Now, I do want to focus on Virginia because, like New England, Virginia had a lot of people who came in right off the bat, and then the South sort of spreads out. So that is why we are sort of separating out Virginia here as a separate, even though it is, yes, technically part of the Southern colonies. When it comes to Virginia, one of the first things that you want to do is you want to look at the Virginia Historical Index, also sometimes referred to as the SWEM Index. Now, this indexed pre-1930 articles that were found in 5 publications and 2 sets of governmental records. This is as close to getting an index to Virginia as you can get. So you'll see that the letters that would appear in the index, and I'll show you that in a second, but those equate to the various publications that you see here. So V is the Virginia Magazine of History and Biography, W is William and Mary Quarterly, T is Tyler's Quarterly Historical and Genealogical Magazine, R is the Virginia Historical Register and Literary Advisor, N is the Lower Norfolk County Virginia Antiquary, H is Henning's Statutes at Large, and C is the Calendar of Virginia State Papers. Here we see the volumes if you were to find them in a library, and they are broken out. You will see that they are arranged in a alphabetically, and they were originally published in 1965. What we see here is that they're showing again the method of the citations, again with those abbreviations that are used. And then this is one of the columns on the far right listing alphabetically some of the individuals and then what we are going to turn to. So if you look at Nicholas there that we've underlined, and you'll see that we have that first cryptic code 1T52 to 57. What this is telling us is that that is Tyler's Quarterly, Volume 1, pages 52 to 57. You'll see the same thing again under family. So this would be for Nicholas or for this particular family. Again, covering that same set of pages. Again, once you've got that information, you can then go look to see if it's on JSTOR, if it's been digitized through, some other institution you have access to, or if you can find the original published journals themselves at your library. One of the most used resources for Virginia is Adventurers of Purse and Person, originally sponsored by the Order of First Families of Virginia, 1607 to 1620. It was commemorating the 400th anniversary of Jamestown. Now, Adventurers of Purse covers those who visited between 1607 and 1625/5 and left descendants or whose grandchildren came to Virginia. The Adventurers of Person are the actual immigrants to Virginia from 1607 to 1624/5 who left descendants. So there's two different sections here, but the purpose of this collection was to document the 109 stockholders or adventurers who were either adventurers of Purse, who themselves visited and then went back to England but left descendants, or those who actually were there, the person who was there and stayed. The book is based on the muster of January 1624 to 25, which is a resource that a lot of early Virginia documentation is taken from. Some of the best known compilations of Virginia genealogies come out of the same journals as that of the SWEM Index. That includes the Virginia Magazine of History and Biography, which is not online. William and Mary College Quarterly is at Ancestry, as is Tyler's Quarterly. They are also, I know William and Mary is on JSTOR. I cannot remember if Tyler's is. The good news about the genealogies of Virginia families is that the volumes themselves were arranged alphabetically. They themselves were published in book form between 1981 and 1982 by Genealogical Publishing Company out of Baltimore, back when all we had were books to go with. The Virginia Immigrants and Adventurers, 1607 to 1635. Again, was done at the same time as Adventures of Purse and Person, and for the same reason, to commemorate the 400th anniversary of Jamestown. It annotated the biographical sketches. It identifies 5,500 original colonists. And again, focusing on those super early arrivals. Here we're looking at annotated biographical sketches instead of general genealogies. And also in this case, Martha W. McCartney, who was the author, notes that 227 people were missing from that 1624 census, with 44 missing from 1625. So from that main document that a lot of these books were being created out of. So this collection aimed to fill in those gaps and extended the dates of inclusion for an additional 10 years to 1635, which is where we get the larger number of colonists in this text. In addition, the following specific folks, there is a chapter where they were that helps to give you a good understanding of the earliest settlement and plantations. And here we see the map section showing those settlements. But then what we're really paying attention to, of course, are the mini bios on the individuals within this publication. However, more importantly is the source citations. Remember at the beginning, I talked about why do we look at all this published stuff? Because it's going to send us somewhere else. And in this particular example for the little mini bio on William Cole, I have highlighted one of the sources from which information was drawn. And in this case, it happens to be from Frederick Dorman's Adventures of Person and Person. So you'll see that sometimes it's like a circle that's going to bring you back to the beginning. So let's talk about some record compilations for Virginia. There is an amazing online resource called the Virginia Colonial Records Project. It was established by the Library of Virginia to find records related to Virginia in other places, such as Great Britain and France and Ireland. It includes things like correspondence between British officials and the colonial officers, customs records, business records, claims for British merchants concerning their Virginia stores. There may be logbooks, ship cargo lists, etc. What's great about this is that some of the records that got destroyed in Virginia over the periods of time may have some kind of auxiliary version back in one of these countries. There are also some early Virginia records that you want to pay a close attention to. There are some scattered Virginia company records that would constitute a census of sorts. When it comes to the vital records of our individuals, really what you're going to be paying close attention to are the church records. They don't have the town vital records as we know them up in New England. Then there are the land records, grants and deeds, probate records again, and then there are a number of court records, including county courts, the Virginia Company, and the House of Burgesses, all different versions of court levels. Now, unfortunately, as with many, many places, there are record challenges. There has been a lot of record loss due to fire, water, mold, war, you name it. There have been jurisdictional changes. This becomes super important with this area, and one of your best bets is to use, excuse me, Newberry Library's Atlas of Historical County Boundaries. Also, you might want to use the map of us.org. These boundaries, and in some situations, some of your areas have like become, especially in Virginia, they're not even a county, they are an independent city. It's one of the unique things about researching in Virginia. Here I have a very lengthy table. This table is in its entirety in the syllabus, showing the record loss in the early counties. As you can see here, there are very few that don't have record loss. A lot of them, unfortunately, stem from actions of the Civil War, but there are other things like, fires and floods and whatnot. So this is a really important list if you are looking for something to know if records are going to survive. And speaking of our records, we want to begin with colonial records. The Colonial Records of Virginia by the Virginia General Assembly Joint Committee on the State of the State Library. This was originally published for, it's available on archive.org. So, I download all of these, I'm not going to lie, in large part because I want to have them even if I don't have internet access. And they include things like, you'll see I've underlined the list of the living and the dead in Virginia on February 16th, 1623. And then also I underlined a list of the number of men, women, and children inhabitants in the several counties within the colony of Virginia in 1634. The purpose, again, you're seeing that we're going back to those early censuses, the census of the living and dead in Virginia, February of 1623, which of course, because we are talking old dates, that would technically be 1623/4, but it's a list of the colony's inhabitants noted who survived the 1622 Indian attack and where in Virginia they were living. This is huge for anybody who has individuals in this early time frame. The list does not include the details about the relations among the settlers or their ages. And I did notice that in certain situations, individuals that I know who are like husband and wife are not identified like side by side in the list. Now, an important thing to know about Virginia is that the Anglican Church, aka the Church of England, was the official state church. It was responsible in this early time frame for not only the religious aspects of the settlers, but also general governance of the parish. This included the keeping of birth, marriages, and deaths, but it also had to do with a lot of things like tax authority, the indenturing of indigent children, road maintenance, a lot of the things that we would expect to find in town records in New England are found within the church records. And one of the other things that is available is there are different subsections for the Library of Virginia, library guides, and you can often do a search. And so one of the things that I did in the wills was I did a search on John Rolfe because why not? He's well known. And of the two items that showed up, the one that pertained to the John Rolfe I was obviously interested in was the one that I'm showing you here. And the details tell us the creation date, in this case of his probate, and then it was part of an index to wills that was not listed in the Virginia Wills and Administrations from 1632 to 1800, but instead we find it proved in 1630 in London. John Rolfe was, of course, one of those killed in the Virginia Massacre of 1622, and that it was published in the Virginia Magazine of History and Biography, volume 58, pages 61 to 65, that it was coming out of the prerogative Court of Canterbury First Group, and that it's abstracted in also the New England Historic Genealogical Register, volume 38, pages 68 to 69. Land records, when it comes to Virginia, there are a lot of important resources. Harrison Fairfax's Virginia Land Grants, a study of conveyance in relation to colonial politics. By far, probably the most important one is Nell Marion Nugent's Cavaliers and Pioneers, which is abstracts of the Virginia land patents and grants from 1623 to 1800 in 5 volumes. This is a go-to for anybody who has early Virginia ancestry, and it is available, good news, on Ancestry. Then there is Gary Parks, who indexed the Virginia land records from the Virginia Magazine of History and Biography, the William and Mary College Quarterly, and Tyler's Quarterly, and that was published in 1982 by GPC as well. All of these are very, very important resources. Not all of them are going to be available online. Obviously, Fairfax is digitally available. It's out of copyright. Nugent is on Ancestry. Parks is not available yet online to the best of my knowledge. When it comes to probate for Virginia, literally Peter Wilson Coldham's English Estates of American Colonists, He has done the American Wilson administrations in the Prerogative Court of Canterbury, 1610 to 1699. So this includes Virginia. There's also Lothrop Wilthington's Virginia Gleanings in England. That is a similar type of compilation. It is available in the Virginia Magazine of History and Biography. That I definitely know is on JSTOR. And then Torrance's, which was just referenced for the John Rolfe, is Virginia Wills and Administration, 1632 to 1800. It is also an index to probate. You can get that one on Family Search. I know we're going really, really fast. This is why we're recording this, so you can watch it and pay attention to the area that you are most interested in. So we are going to finish off with the South. And as I mentioned, we are focusing on North and South Carolina and Georgia. The best way to say what was going on with these guys is to sort of give you a little timeline. So in 1629, the Carolinas began under a proprietary charter in that year. In 1663, that Carolina charter was an additional Carolina charter was granted by Charles II, and it had to be redefined a little bit in 1665 because there was some discussion over just exactly where Virginia's southern border was. And there were individuals from Virginia who had already moved into these areas, and so that had to be officially settled. The important thing to know about the Carolinas is that although they were separate colonies with separate governments, they did not officially separate and become North and South Carolina as we know them later on in the 1700s until 1712. And Georgia is the late one to this whole party. It became our 13th colony in 1733. A little historical statistics for the makeup of South Carolina, North Carolina, and Virginia and Pennsylvania. You can see that when it comes to the English, that you'll see that in no place are the English a majority. They may be very, very close, like in Virginia, thus why we separated out Virginia. But you'll find that others of what are now the United Kingdom also had individuals who came, and then there were many other immigrants to these areas that were from other places as well. This information here was taken from the historical statistics of the United States from colonial times to 1970. Like the others, we're going to focus on some compilations. And for North Carolina, I got to tell you, the Colonial and State Records of North Carolina, which is part of the documenting the American South, this is a go-to. You want to check this out for sure. One of the things that you can do is, in this case, I was browsing by date. I like to sometimes do that because you'll notice that there's a lot of dates that are grayed out. That means there's no records. However, if I can go to a particular date, I chose 1643 in this case, it then showed me the date, the resources that covered that year. And I specifically picked the act of the Virginia General Assembly concerning a land patent to Walter Austin et al. For land in Virginia of that date, which then reveals this digital abstract that allows me to read it for myself, but also tells me where it came from. In this case, it's coming out of Henning's Virginia Statutes at Large, which I had mentioned for Virginia, but this is pertaining to resources or information about North Carolina individuals. So keep in mind that a lot of people from Virginia, English into Virginia, also then went down into North Carolina. When it comes to some of the records, we're going to talk about just a couple of the more prevalent and more helpful for you. starting off with the American Quaker genealogy volumes. In large part, this is a 6-volume abstract of the various records that were available at the Swarthmore Family Friends Historical Library, which is at Swarthmore College. And each of the volumes is devoted to different areas. When it comes to North and South Carolina, Volume 1 is your go-to for your Quakers who were arriving in this time frame, largely coming from England and its additional countries because of the persecution to the Quakers. Once you have found an abstract, in this case, I'm showing you here for Thomas Vestal, what you want to do is then go to Ancestry and or Family Search, depending on who has the records you need, the originals, and see exactly everything that it says. To make sure that number one, the abstract is correct, and number two, that it doesn't give you any additional information. So in this instance, this is saying that in the 31st day of the 5th month of 1755 is when they actually requested their basically their certificate of removal. And then, according to Hinshaw, they actually received it and left in the 28th of the 6th month. JSTOR is a gold mine. Many public libraries have subscriptions so that you may be able to access it remotely. I pay for it. I want to say it's like 20 bucks a month for me. I go to it all the time for things. They have so many scholarly journals of any type. But here you'll see that there is an entire article on the South Carolina Episcopal Church and their records. Like Virginia, South Carolina had the established Church of the Church of England, or the Anglicans. And again, the parish was to provide a fit person for a register of births, christenings, marriages, and burials. And at that point in 1706, when that was established, 10 parishes were originally set up. Now, when it comes to finding those parishes, a lot of these parishes are either in book form, they've been published in book form, or they have been published in the South Carolina Historical Magazine. So one or the other may have the parishes, and the item that you're seeing here is that I put for Prince Frederick came out of that article about the Episcopal churches and where they are located, and then allowed me to then go look for this register, which I did find on Internet Archive, and then that allowed me to go looking for the information. And you'll see that there are some very early births listed. When it comes to land records, probably your go-to for North Carolina is going to be the North Carolina landgrants.com website. There are images, there are searches. It is a gold mine of records. If you have North Carolina, go there first for any kind of land dealings. It is an amazing collection. Understand that it is done by meets and bounds, so that's like, your various stumps and rivers and whatnot. When it comes to Georgia, the Georgia Archives has a virtual vault, and I have captured some of the ones that are going to be most important to those of us researching this early period, including the Chatham County, the colonial estate records that are just below the Chatham County deed books there on the right, as well as colonial will books there, colonial conveyances, and the colonial plats and warrants. These are just a few of the resources that are available there to assist you in identifying and viewing digital copies of records. And I want to just round everything out by giving you some general resources to turn to for regardless of where your people are. One of the most important for those early arrivers is going to be what Ancestry calls the US and Canada Passenger and Immigration Lists Index, the 1500s to the 1900s. It identifies the immigrant, if known, the arrival year, where they were going. And then at the bottom, so I've highlighted the two things you care most about. That's the top part. And then at the bottom, it's going to tell you where that was found, most often in a published book somewhere. The other great resource on Ancestry is the American Genealogical Biographical Index, aka AGBI, and this was begun by Godfrey Library in Connecticut back in the like 1950s. They didn't finish it until early 2000s. And again, you have your individual with whatever information may be known, like a birth date or something, the place, and then again, you can skip that volume and page number. That's for the original books that were published, but go down to the reference because that's going to lead you to what you're going to want to look at. And then pretty much anything by Coldham. He has done so many lists of immigrants. He has extensive documentation of mostly the poor immigrants to Virginia. So there's the Complete Book of Immigrants, 1607 to 1660 on up, and he's done them in various sections. These are just a handful of the books he has published. Most of his books were published by the by Genealogical Publishing Company. And here we see one of those books. This happens to be the Complete Book of Immigrants, 1700 to 1750. I will tell you that if you go to the Genealogical Publishing Company's website, which is genealogical.com, most of Peter Coldham's books are available digitally on a subscription service that the GPC now offers. So to review, it's really important to understand the history of the colony, keep border disputes between the colonies in mind because they were all jockeying for land. Religious denominations may also hold clues to your English origins. Head rights were a type of land. They offered incentive to immigrate and they explain why your people came over. And remember that all of the compiled resources of published records are going to lead you to other published records and resources.
All right. Thank you so much, Rhonda, for that great lecture this afternoon. So much valuable information packed in there. Thank you very much. So we've had a lot of great questions coming in. We'll get to those in just a moment. Just a couple of things to share first. So quickly, just wanted to mention some events coming up that may be of interest. First up is a online seminar on 17th century English research. This will be happening in June and ending on July 1st. This will be presented by Else Churchill of the Society of Genealogists, which is a genealogical society in the UK. And then on June 12th, Rhonda is giving another free lecture, this time on best published resources for German research in America. And then finally, I wanted to mention an upcoming research tour that we have taking place at our Boston headquarters. This is Come Home to New England, and this will be a multi-day program where you can come get consultations from our experts, lectures, dedicated research time in the library. So that should be a lot of fun as well. And then also wanted to mention that we currently have a 10% off on our Great Migration collection at our online bookstore. So you can go to our bookstore on AmericanAncestors.org and click on the Great Migration collection. This is just a few of the books available in that collection. And the promo code for that is GM Mayflower 525. And we can include that in our follow-up email as well. And then finally, before we get to your questions, also wanted to mention that we're currently offering $25 off new memberships, and that's with the code May25, and that will be available through the end of the month. All right, so we've had a lot of great questions coming in. Unfortunately, we won't be able to get to all of them, but I'll squeeze in as many as possible. So first up, Rhonda, we had multiple questions asking about all of the great books you mentioned, particularly the New England books. But folks were wondering where those might be available, if they often are available in public libraries, or if a lot of the books you've mentioned are a bit more rare and maybe found elsewhere.
So the bulk of the ones that are currently published are probably going to be in any library that has a genealogical uh, like department. I will say that if you are talking the southern stuff, you may want to look at a large, if and you live up in the north, you may want to look for a large uh, genealogical libraries such as American Ancestors. So, because we do have a lot of these published volumes on our shelves. Also, I'm not going to lie, my go-to whenever I'm looking for a particular book is to immediately go to Internet Archive and or to use Google searches, to use the Google search, put in the book, and then go under More and click on Books to see if I can get a preview of it, to do a search in it. Sometimes on Internet Archive, I have saved myself a lot of headache because they now allow you to check out certain books so you can like log in and borrow it for X amount of time so that you can go through it. I did. I've done a lot of that. And then sometimes I'm surprised at what is available for me to really get into on Internet Archive. And I am not above using my Kindle and Google Books, Google Play for books. I buy a lot of books electronically so that number one, my house is not just like a single like little column between piles of books, but also so that I can take them everywhere with me when I go places, research tours and so forth. So I start out with if I know the publisher is like us, I'll go there and see what they have. Some things may be available online, some not. Like our Great Migration compilation sketches are available on as one of our databases. And then other things I will use Google rather than Bing, in large part because Google does have a separate book, like just devoted to books.
Okay, great. Thank you. And then a question here. What resources would you recommend for finding early Quakers in Massachusetts, Rhode Island, or New York?
So Hinshaw has some New York. Um, for the Massachusetts Quaker records, you want to use Internet Archive and put in the name of, like, do a search at the Internet Archive site for the meeting name. The records for much of the New England area were turned over, especially Massachusetts, were turned over to the University of Massachusetts Amherst. They have been now digitized and are being uploaded to Internet Archive as the digitization is, uh, you know, being finalized for the volumes. There's a lot of books. So that is my go-to. As far as New York, like I said, there is a section of Hinshaw that deals with New York. He does not deal with New England for whatever reason. I think in large part because those records had not been deposited at Swarthmore in Pennsylvania.
Okay, great. Thank you. And then I know, Rhonda, you mentioned a lot of resources today, so it might be hard to kind of speak to all of them. But we got a question of if the resources mentioned will generally include free Black folks. Um, do you know if that would generally be the case, or are there kind of separate resources you might recommend for that research?
So in large part, you're probably going to be looking for other resources. Um, in a like for Massachusetts, we do have free persons of color that was done by Dorman. Um, and but a lot of the you when you're doing searches, and by that I mean like general web searches, you'd be surprised what Google will tell you. I would put like free person of color, because that's usually what they were referred to in this time frame. And then I would put that in quotation marks, and then like the colony, like North Carolina colony or whatever it is you are looking for to see what might pop up.
Okay, great. Thank you. Then a question, is there a compilation of individuals receiving William Penn land grants?
So there is a whole bunch of mess for Pennsylvania. As far as preceding William Penn, a lot of that was handled under New York, because he gets there pretty early. But I would look both at the New York stuff, and understand again that at one point it's weird. They actually shared a governor at one point, as I recall. But look to I always will add a year when I'm going back to my Google search. I have yet to not find stuff with Google. And I would look for, but I'd also, as far as Pennsylvania goes, anything that they've got, they probably made available on the website that I shared, which is basically like their historical everything. And they've got it broken down by different types of records with the years on it. So that page that I showed that I, that I also included the blue book by Munger, there all of their resources you'll see on the left hand side, and they're based on dates. So I would go there first.
Okay, great. Thank you. And then we got a question, how does one determine which volume of the silver books to use for your research? Can you speak a little bit more about how those are kind of organized?
Sure. So the books are arranged by the passengers on the Mayflower. Certain of the individuals who were a little more prolific, shall we say, may have multiple volumes. And so you can, so for instance, I'm trying to think of somebody off the top of my head where I know that they've got multiple, uh, like volumes based on children. And I want to say that William Brewster is one of those who has multiple kids. Uh, so technically, the book is like Through the Sun John or whatever. The information we have on American ancestors as part of the Silver Series search will give you anybody who's in that. You can search all of the books, and anybody who shows up in that fifth generation with that name, then that will tell you which book it is, and then you may want to buy that specific book if it's available, or go find it in the library.
All right, perfect. Thank you. Then a question here, in the for the sorry, in the Virginia records that you mentioned, someone wanted to know if those records would generally include enslaved people as property. Do you know if that would be the case?
So slavery is not as like you're more apt to find people over like in the islands before you're going to find them in Virginia. Um, but if they owned slaves, enslaved individuals at the time of their death, or if they are selling one of their slaves. So if they owned them, look at the probate records. If they are selling them to somebody, sadly, look at the land records, because that is where all property sales are handled.
Okay, thank you. So I think we've got time for about a couple more questions here. Someone wanted to know if there's any information about orphan children who were put on ships to the colonies.
I am unaware of any massive type of migration of orphans in this time period. most of colonies in this time period, you got your men who come over first. Then, as is the case with the women, with Virginia, you're going to have your quote Jamestown brides, similar to the filles du roi for the French Canadians, where they send over some single women to get married so that the guys will stay put. But if there's anything where there are individuals who are being shipped, it's usually I would check Hold'em's books because he's going to deal with anything having to do with individuals who like were up against the laws. He has an entire book about immigrants and bondage, which is not about necessarily lists of individuals, but about the resources for that. So that's another good book to have. So I would like, if you're talking about that time period, if we're talking sort of Virginia, especially that would be Coldham. And I'm unaware of orphan children being sent to New England. They would not have appreciated that at all. So,
Great. Thank you, Rhonda. And then let's see, we'll do one more here. Um, this might be somewhat related answer, but question, were there records of people deported to the colonies involuntarily, such as prisoners and abductees?
oh yeah, absolutely. And in some situations, you will find where they were given a choice back in England to either go to jail or you can go off for your 3, 4, 7 years, however many years you're going to have to serve. And though there are volumes devoted to that, including some of the ones that Coldham did, and if you're looking at a specific area, you can, the best thing for me would be is if you emailed me, and then I can look specifically for a book because that might serve for that area because some of them were unique. What's great about those books though is that they usually reference the like the court that sentenced them, etc.
Okay, great. Thank you. So unfortunately, we are in a bit of overtime, so I'm gonna leave questions there. I do want to mention as well, we did get a few questions about the syllabus for today. So I popped that in the chat earlier, and I'm just going to do that again now. And it will be in our follow-up email as well. And I just want to give Rhonda a big shout out. She put a lot of work into the syllabus and, of course, into the presentation as well. The syllabus, I think, came in at about 23 pages or so. So it's hefty, it's packed with information. So you might be interested in checking that out. And as we mentioned, the recording will be available later today as well, so that you can go and refer back to the slides and to the information that Rhonda shared today. And I'll mention if you are interested in, if you have kind of more specific questions about your family history research, you might consider hiring our research services team or using our expanded chat service. I would highly recommend that for the questions we didn't get to today. We have this free chat service, which puts you in direct communication with our genealogists, and it's totally free and open to the public. It's available Tuesday through Saturday from 10 to 6 p.m. Eastern Time. And to access that service, you can just go to americanancestors.org/chat. Again, can't recommend it enough. That's a great way to get your questions answered. You can also book a one-on-one consultation with our experts at the link shown on the screen or through the QR code displayed there as well. And I'll also mention that Rhonda is one of our genealogists who gives a lot of these consultations. You can book one with her if you'd like to do that as well. So thank you all again for joining us and for your great questions today as well. As you leave the webinar, you'll have the opportunity to fill out a survey and give us your feedback. As we continue to expand our webinars and online offerings, any and all feedback is extremely helpful and appreciated. This free webinar was made possible by the generous support of our members and friends around the world. Please consider making a gift to American Ancestors to help keep these programs free and to create more free webinars as well. If you would like to access more how-to resources or learn about upcoming online educational programs, please visit our online learning center at americanancestors.org/education. I wish you all the best of luck in your research, and I hope to see you at our online programs in the future. Goodbye for now.